In Kessig, the werewolves outnumber the priests. Werewolves, those transient creatures whose lives hinge on the waxing and waning of the moon. A mechanic introduced in the Innistrad set, the concept of day and night bound creatures isn't exactly a popular archetype with the player base. The original creature types were lycanthrope and human wolf, neither particularly useful, and both quickly negated by the Grand Creature Type update back in 2007. Refined by the release of Midnight Hunt, the mechanic of constantly swapping your creatures gained a new lease on life, and the creatures of the night found the spotlight once again. Though these creatures exist on other Magic the Gathering planes, today we will be discussing those who roam the wilds of Kessig in Innistrad. Those who suffer from lycanthropy on the plane of Innistrad are not always afflicted by the bite of another. Rather, some are cursed, and this curse lies dormant until they hear a great howl emanating from deep within the woods of the Ulvenwald. This howl beckons them to hunt, activating the malady in their blood, and from their first hunt on, they are dual creatures of day and night. The transformation process is harrowing for the lycanthrope and incredibly disturbing to any witnesses. The eyes change first, the whites darkening and the irises filling with color. The claws go next. The hands elongate, knife-like claws extend from the fingertips, and the thumb forms a claw back near the wrist. The muzzle thrusts forward out of the human skull, and the teeth jut through the gums in sharp points. Bones crack as they rearrange. Marrow spills into the bloodstream as ribs and skull fracture and telescope. Thick, wiry fur pushes through the skin, often pushing out normal human hair. The tailbone elongates and becomes a shaggy wolf's tail. Metabolism speeds up, increasing blood flow, oxygen flow, and glandular production, creating cravings for protein and fat. Any clothing that was worn at the time of the change is generally torn to shreds and falls away. If a werewolf dies in beast form, it changes back to human form, a process called death reversion. The hamlets and villages that dotted Kessig beyond the Ulvenwald woods are ones perpetually leery of the supernatural surrounding them. Avabrook, once a thriving town, was overrun by werewolves, most of its citizens killed. Many of them, such as the mayor of Avabrook, were revealed to be werewolves themselves, despite the majority of them still being run off by the Mondronen pack. A mysterious ritual was performed on the site, leveling the town from its central cathedral. After this, Avabrook was called Hollowhenge, and today it is only home to the terrible wraiths and spirits left by its vicious destruction. The citizens of Kessig are a superstitious lot, often rallying against those they might suspect of lycanthropy. At one point, after the disappearance of Avacyn, citizens were instructed to always wear a silver amulet if traveling after dark. Those who do carry the curse often live in fear, desperately trying to keep their normal human lives while suffering their transformations in secret. Others are more brash, reveling in their power, creatures such as Tovalar, who refuse to live hushed lives and seek to bring werewolf kind into powerful howl packs. There are several of these packs throughout Kessig and Innistrad. The aforementioned Mondronen Howl Pack, originally led by the powerful and cruel Tovalar, was a fearsome group numbering around 60 that terrorized the most rural spaces in Kessig. Tovalar was unrepentant in his use of violence, and during the times that Avacyn the Archangel was imprisoned within the Hell Vault, seized every opportunity to move in on nearby cities and wreak havoc. This pack was disbanded after Avacyn's return, being driven out of the cities and hunted down by all manner of angels. The Krallen Horde. Led by a powerful werewolf named Ulrich, the Krallen Horde boasts the largest number of werewolves in a pack, totaling anywhere from 50 to 200, depending on season and circumstance. Ulrich is undiscerning in who is allowed to join his ranks, hosting all manner of werewolves from across Innistrad. The Leerog. Transforming under the dark of the new moon rather than a full one, the pack members of the Leerog were fierce and violent creatures, attacking human children in particular. They went so far as to attack orphanages to obtain such protected fodder. This Howl Pack did not survive the eventual return of Avacyn. The Vilden. This pack of werewolves has an especially cruel barrier of entry. You must have killed someone before becoming a werewolf. Murder is how you get in. Coming to prominence after the Curse Mute, the spell created by Avacyn to assuage the curse of lycanthropy that was ended by her fall and subsequent destruction, the Vilden hunt and thrive in the highlands of Kessig and Stensia. Wolfear. Speaking of Avacyn and the Curse Mute, a pseudo-pack called the Wolfear came into being from those whose affliction was eased by the Archangel. Fusing their split beings into one, these anthropomorphic creatures were dedicated servants of Avacyn, protecting humanity even after the angel was destroyed, though very few of them survived the breaking of her spell. Dire. The Dire Pack was comprised of the nastiest werewolves touched by Emrakul as she descended upon the plane of Innistrad and was subsequently imprisoned within the Silver Moon. They are faster, stronger, larger, and more dangerous than normal werewolves, thus making up the bulk of Tovalar's new pack after the disbanding of the Mundronin. Silverfur. Led by a pair of Wolfear named Johanna and Pavel, the Silverfur pack is the last remaining few of those transformed by the Curse Mute. Though they are small in number, they consider themselves virtuous and helpful, aiding against the likes of Emrakul and Nahiri during the Battle of Thraben. Drone Pack. These werewolves are those touched by Emrakul, their flesh warped and their minds changed by the Keening Mother. One of my favorite planeswalkers happens to be a werewolf. Arlinn Kord, who I mentioned in my previous video regarding the Markovs, has a tumultuous history, both with her lycanthropy and those in power on Innistrad. Summoned into the hunt as a teenager, Arlinn was wary of indulging in the violence of her wild nature, and often butted heads with pack leader Tovalar, who mentored the young werewolf for a time. Eventually, Arlinn's refusal to partake in senseless violence came to a head, and Tovalar fought with her, their battle ending with Arlinn escaping from the pack. Keeping her lycanthropy a secret, Arlinn found herself as part of the Church of Avacyn, using the Archangel's charms and magic to fend off the transformation. Her dedication paid off, with Arlinn eventually being named an Archmage of Gold Knight. Unfortunately, her coronation was beset upon by demons, and her rage could no longer be contained or hidden. Arlinn Kord transformed, tearing apart every devil in sight, and, shockingly, even an angel. This act ignited her planeswalker spark, and she found herself ripped away from Innistrad. Arlinn has been involved in a great many stories since then, including the War of the Spark, Midnight Hunt, Crimson Vow, and even fighting alongside Sorin Markov once again during the multiversal Phyrexian invasion. She considers herself a protector of werewolf kind and hopes that, despite everything, there can be peace on Innistrad. Much like vampires and their legendary families, the werewolves of Innistrad have suffered various onslaughts and have been on fluctuating sides throughout history, depending on pack. However, they do not fuse themselves so readily to the politics of the plane as vampires do, and therefore do not make so many dramatic appearances. Their largest line in Innistrad history involves the Travails and the Eternal Night that followed. In a letter to Vadric, the famed astronomancer, Arlinn Kord lamented, "Daylight is losing its battle against an invading night. This autumn in the provinces is crisper than usual, the harvest harsher. The night leaves a skin of frost on the pumpkin fields and on the last clinging leaves of the Kessig woods. No tentacled horrors have been seen since the closing of the travails, and the keening mother slumbers peacefully behind the face of the moon. But I've heard farm folk whisper of a wrongness since that time, a misstep of the ticking hours, a bend in the shape of the darkness. I fear not all was put right after the travails. And on this world, there are always those who will take advantage of darkness. Of course, I hear the howls in the night. At first, Kessigers called it a blessing from Sigarda that, since the travails, those howls always died out, lonely plaints to an uncaring moon. But more and more, the wolf sounds echo and multiply, full and strong and yearning, a chorus of savage throats. In their way, the werewolves are celebrating. They celebrate their hot breaths embracing air, the smell of flesh in their nostrils, the bending of their skeletons timed to the emergence of the moon. They celebrate that the night constricts the day to a few dwindling pale hours, and they celebrate the belief that the night will soon be theirs. As I pen this, I hear my own pack whimpering in the woods behind me. I feel the urgent way they paw at the earth, how their heartbeats quicken as they look back into the darkened Ulvenwald. I know they feel the pull of the howl, for I feel it too. We must seek a way to put things right, and soon. We touched upon these events in my previous video, where a snowballing of events led to a grand conflict of nearly everyone versus the Markov Voldaren clans, as Olivia Voldaren vowed to lord over Innistrad herself. The Eternal Night is not caused by these actions. That is thanks to Emrakul being imprisoned in the Silver Moon hanging over Innistrad, but Olivia, of course, stole one half of the required artifacts to rebalance the sun and moon in the sky, only after Tovalar himself disrupted the initial ritual. Neither of these creatures wanted the sun to return, as they both individually found themselves in greater power in the perpetual darkness. Despite this, Tovalar and his pack did come to Arlynn's aid as she fought off Olivia for the Moonsilver Key, and eventually balance was indeed restored. Mechanically, werewolves can be a tough lot to work with. The day and night cycles for each game are dependent on players casting or not casting spells. Previously, this would leave werewolf players at a disadvantage, their most powerful creatures stuck in human form and at the mercy of everyone else at the table. However, one of the best and most viable werewolf creature cards, especially as a commander, changed the game. Tovalar, Dire Overlord, can force nighttime on your turn, effectively overruling any gameplay interactions. This gave players more agency in controlling their board state, and while it didn't massively improve the popularity of the creature type at the table, it did make them more viable. Tovalar is currently the only werewolf in the top 100 of commanders on EDHREC, and he's sitting at number 89. Respectable. Out of curiosity, I kept scouring the top list. He's the only werewolf in the top 200 as well. And 300. And 400. Okay, I stopped at 400. It's fairly definitive that werewolf isn't exactly a favorite, and while EDHREC isn't the end-all be-all of every Magic the Gathering player, it's got a pretty good pulse on the fan base. Older werewolves are even more complicated to work with, as they don't explicitly state the same day-night cycle as the Midnight Hunt cards. But if you were me and I were you, I'd just ask your table if they're cool with rule zeroing werewolves to all work on the same cycle. As someone with a Tovalar deck with Arlinn Kord at his side, I'm always the first to ask. Please don't make me do this. There you have it. The Werewolves of Innistrad and their cruel fates. It seems that everyone on Innistrad is in for a gloomy life, and those unwilling to exploit humankind tend to be worse for wear. Thank you guys, as always, for joining me here in the study. It really means a lot. If you've liked these videos, please consider subscribing and tossing a like my way. You'd be surprised how much it helps the channel's growth. See you next time. Deep in the House of Lore.